the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Welcome. Not sure what Apollo's talking about over there. All right. Yeah, it's January 3rd. We're well into January now, and 2025. And we got a lot to cover today. Nothing really big in depth, I don't think. I expect that everything is going to be kind of quick highlights because there's just a lot going on. But nothing like a big, like yesterday. Luckily, no terrorist attacks or anything like that out there. All right. So we're going to talk about an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education about woke. We're going to talk about Speaker of the House, Johnson, trying to get reelected as Speaker of the House. The new House and the new Senate are in session, and the House cannot do anything, cannot move forward, cannot certify the election, cannot do anything until they choose a Speaker. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Nippon Steel's efforts to try to buy U.S. steel. Net neutrality maybe is dead forever. Maybe forever. That's good news. And interesting why. We'll see in a minute. Energy costs. We'll talk about drone bans. Syria. Is Syria really abandoned? The new Syrian regime abandoning Islamism, and they're going to be all secular and pro-Western and friendly and nice and so on. We'll talk about that. And then finally, it's almost like it's a new comedy series out of South Korea. What is going on with South Korean politics and what is going on with the president over there? It is really crazy. Drin says, did you see Bernie Sanders coming out against H-1Bs? Why does that surprise anybody? The left has always been anti-immigration. He's always been anti-H-1B. That's why haven't even mentioned it, because it's like, yeah, of course. The left is anti-immigration, always. And always has been. They're the ones who blocked Bush's attempts at comprehensive immigration reform. So I don't know why people are surprised. I have no idea why people are surprised. Bernie Sanders himself has explicitly said on several occasions that he is anti-immigration. It lowers wages, he says. It's bad for unions. It's, you've got to take care of American workers first and foremost. This is what I've said over and over and over again over the last 8 years, that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump have a lot in common. A lot in common. Have for a long, long time. This is nothing new at all. At all. Anyway. So I've got a bunch of news. You can shape the show by asking questions about pretty much anything. I'm not sure I can answer questions about everything, but I take a stab at almost everything. There are a few questions I say, I don't know, and just pass on them. But so you get to ask questions about anything. To do that, you use the Super Chat feature. That's also a way to support the show. So ask questions, support the show, get the content you want covered in the show, right? You want me to cover something else? Talk about a news story that I'm not covering? Ask about it in the chat, and I will try to answer it. So please take advantage of that and support our efforts here at the Yaron Brook Show. All right, I want to mention two things coming up before I go into the news. One is on first weekend of February, I'll be participating at a conference in Florida, Naples, Florida, Rands Day conference. It's a Rands Day conference. So you can go to randsday.com and you can find information about this conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's Rands Day because the 2nd of February is Rand's birthday, and the conference celebrates that. And I will be a speaker, Harry Binswanger, Peter Schwartz, and there will be a bunch of others. It'll be a lot of fun. A lot of longtime objectivists, a lot of new objectivists, a nice combination of. Naples, Florida is not a bad place to be in February. Weather's fantastic. Best weather Florida has is in February. So you should be coming down from the Northeast or from the Midwest and coming hang out with us first week. So if you're interested, check out ransday.com. There's a link there. That's just an expression of I think it's Harry Binswanger's proposal for a holiday, Ransday, and then there's a link there to the conference itself. Come on down. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's not that expensive. And again, great place to spend a few days in February. You might make a week of it and make a vacation. If you live in Florida, just jump in a car and drive down. It'll be a blast. All right, or drive up, down, up. I don't know. It depends where you're coming from, I guess. And then the second event is actually on Tuesday, a week from, well, not a week from, like 4 days from now. I think it's 4 days from now. So it just came together, kind of last minute. It's come together here. And that'll be in San Francisco. It'll be a talk that I'm giving on egoism, on why be selfish. We'll see exactly what's covered, but basically it's about the morality of egoism and how to live forward. We've got a bunch of founders, techies coming, and if you're in San Francisco, if you're in the Bay Area and would like to drive up to San Francisco, I know that's a hike up there, particularly with traffic. It is happening on Tuesday. I think it's the 7th. 4 days from now, 7th, right? And 7 p.m. You can find information about it on my Twitter feed. If Miroslav is here, and he can pull the link to it off of my Twitter feed, that would be great. Otherwise, you can go to my Twitter feed and find information about the talk there. If I have a moment here to check out Twitter, maybe I'll just do it now. I will pull up the feed and post it on the chat, and post it in the descriptor, and hopefully, we've got a fairly large auditorium, but it's filling up fast. I think we're getting a lot of non-objectivists, which is exactly the people I want. We're getting people who might have read Ayn Rand, but are not objectivists. We're getting a lot of people who maybe have not been exposed to Ayn Rand. So a lot of people in the tech sector, Silicon Valley, it should be a fun event. I'm looking forward to it. I'm in San Francisco for some other stuff, so this is a good opportunity to put something together and get something done and have an exciting event. There it is. Miroslav has already put it up, so you can see the link. I will also include the link in the description of the talk down below. And let me just see. Ta-da-dum, ta-da-dum. All right. Okay. So first up, I want to talk about this article in. This is an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education. This is a kind of a publication of professors in higher education. It's kind of the mainstream publication in higher education. It has been very much kind of captured, if you will, or has in the past championed woke. It basically is whatever academia is reflecting, right? It is what is academia. It reflects back to academia what is going on in academia. So it is very kind of mainstream academia, if you want, and mainstream academia over the last 10 years has been quite woke, and it's the Chronicle of Higher Education has reflected that back to them. Well, they just had a pretty amazing article published, very critical of woke, and I thought I'd read you some of it. It's kind of lengthy, but I think it's worth reading. And considering that this was published at the Chronicle of Higher Education. Now, I don't want to make a big deal out of one article, and maybe we'll have to see if there's a trend and there's more that's going to come out. But, one article is better than 0 articles. And this one article is pretty hard hitting. Pretty hard hitting. All right, so let's read it. And as you'll see, written by somebody probably, most likely, on the left, right? So that's part of what makes this hard hitting. He writes, quote, "Over the last 10 years or so, a cultural revolution has been imposed on this country from the top down. Its ideas originated in the academy, and it's been carried out of the academy by elite educated activists and journalists and academics. Its agenda insists that the nuclear family is evil, that something called whiteness is evil, that the sex binary, which is core to human biology, is a social construct. It is responsible for the DEI regime, the training and minders and guidelines that have blighted American workplaces. It is joyless, vengeful, and tyrannical. It is purist, totalistic. I don't know if that's a word. It demands affirmative, continuous, and enthusiastic consent." Describes woke pretty well. How did we get to this pass? Article continues. How did the academy, the school and citadel and engine of this revolution become so desperately out of touch with reality, including the reality of people's lives outside the liberal elite, their needs and beliefs and experiences? One answer is that academics tend to live inside a bubble. When groups whose members are broadly similar in outlook are isolated from external influences, two things happen. Their opinions become more homogeneous, and their opinions become more extreme, which is exactly what's been taking place in the academy in recent decades. The ratio of liberals to conservatives has soared, and more of those who identify as left identify as far left. And both of those trends are more pronounced in the fields and institutions that are leading the revolution: the humanities, the social sciences, exclusive of economics, the studies programs and departments, the schools of education and social work, the elite universities, and liberal arts colleges. Now, I'll offer you, I think, a deep analysis of why this is happening in a moment, but it's interesting to see how they see it. This is a good sentence, I think. The reason that these disciplines have drifted so far from reality is that they are not answerable to reality. Those fields have another thing in common. They're intellectually corrupt. You know what I'm talking about? Any fool idea passes muster, no matter how preposterous, as long as it conforms to prevailing theoretical trends and preferred ideological positions. Nobody wants to make waves, to speak up at a conference, to undermine a colleague or colleague's students, to invite examination of their own research. Data is massaged. Texts are squeezed or bound or gagged. Jargon helps to paper over cracks in logic. Countervailing evidence is tucked under the cushion. Standards are ignored to the point where no one can even recall what they are anymore. It's no wonder that the social sciences are suffering a replication crisis. In the humanities, there is no crisis because there is no replication to begin with. No factual claims to reproduce. He goes on. The reason that these disciplines can drift so far from reality is that they're not answerable to reality. If an engineer miscalculates an equation, the building will fall down. But what would accountability to reality mean in the humanities, given that their findings are never applied? The more a field becomes beholden to theory, or theory, the further it floats away from empirical observations and therefore corrections. The enterprise becomes entirely self-referential. Words built on words, a kind of intellectual Ponzi scheme. I like that. That is a great way to think about it, intellectual Ponzi scheme. So how are academics going to respond to their political repudiation? One alternative, the likeliest one, will be to stay the course. The people have spoken, but the people are wrong. They've been misinformed and disinformed. They are victims of false consciousness, too benighted to understand their own interests. They are racist, sexist, xenophobic, yearning for a strongman. The attitude reminds me of the few American communists who were still around when I was young, scientifically certain of everything as they headed towards political extinction. But academics have another option. They can entertain the possibility that they've been wrong about a lot of things, and for a long time. They can consider the notion that Harris lost because of racism and sexism is belied by the fact that we have already elected a black president, that Harris received a larger share of white vote than Joe Biden, that a female presidential candidate has already won the popular vote, that the nation, far from distrusting women with executive office, has elected 44 female governors in 31 states, that 16 of those governors have been Republicans, which means that most Republicans supported them, that those states included not only blue or purple ones, but Alabama, Arkansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and South Dakota, that Kansas and Texas, they've actually elected Democratic women governors. And that while there are surely people in this country who wouldn't vote for a woman or non-white presidential candidate, they also surely wouldn't vote for any Democrat. That Harris lost for other reasons altogether. They might further consider that the majority of Black, Latino, and Asian Americans do not share their politics or ideology. That the same people who speak for those communities in elite liberal spaces, not only colleges and universities, but the media, the arts, and nonprofits, share the politics and points of view not of those communities, but of other liberal elites, and therefore do not, in the simplest and most important sense, represent them. And then he closes, yes, Trump is appalling, evil, criminal. But the worse he is, the worse the liberal elite must be if so many prefer him to them. That was really good. Coming from somebody on the left. Now, there's still not philosophical soul-searching. There's still not a real soul-searching about the real causes, about the postmodern philosophy that guides all of this, about the whole repudiation of reason, about the repudiation of logic. Logic is connected to reality, about the very fact that modern academics repudiate the idea that reality matters, that reality is objective. There's also no repudiation of the idea of altruism, which ultimately guides the whole intellectual framework of intersectionality and setting group against group, and of collectivism more broadly, of collectivism on top of altruism, which demands the sacrifice of individuals to groups. But at least there is a recognition that the woke leftist elites have become completely divorced from reality. And that from somebody who clearly hates Donald Trump. I'll give him credit for that, as well as for denouncing the left. Somebody who's clearly not just a MAGA conservative, and yet who can recognize that the left, the dominant ideology today in the humanities, social sciences, is fundamentally corrupt and disastrous. And by the way, he's wrong that it has no effect on reality. It has a huge effect on reality. It has an effect on people's psychology. It has an effect on people's attitudes towards life. It has an effect on the way people vote, but also on the way people structure their lives and the way they behave and the way they and what they do with their lives. And it is a disaster. It's part of why this country is being and is so dark and oppressive, and why there's so little real thinking going on both left and right. These are supposed to be the intellectual elites. These are the people who are supposed to be teaching us how to think, the facts of reality. And by not doing that, teaching us in a sense the opposite, they are undermining the entire culture. So yes, this is pretty horrific, and this is representative, I think, today of our leftist elites, the elites at our top universities, particularly at our top universities, but really overwhelmingly left-right. Our universities are dominated by the left, and often the worst kind of left, the worst type of left. And all of that to add a point of reference to the idea that I've been articulating for a while now, that maybe, I don't know this for fact, but I can hope, we've achieved some kind of peak woke, peak crazy left, peak insane left, and that maybe now even within the left, even within the left, the political left, but also the intellectual left, there is a real rethinking not just of their politics, but more fundamentally, and maybe more importantly, a rethinking of their philosophical framework, their philosophical ideas. So we can hope. All right, let's see. As we speak, the vote in the House of Representatives to basically reappoint Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House. The voting happened just a few minutes ago, literally a few minutes ago. Mike Johnson got support from Donald Trump, who continues to make calls to try to get him a victory. And yet, in the first round of voting, in the first ballot, if you will, Mike Johnson lost. This is, at least to some extent, repudiation, a snub at Trump, because Trump really has gone out lobbying for him. So, it's only, Republicans' control of the House is really minimal. At least present today, there are 219 Republicans and 215 Democrats. He needs 218 votes. He needs 218 votes. He has to win, right? He needs 218 votes to win. He has, there are 3 Republicans who voted against him. Thomas Massey from Kentucky, who said all along that he would vote against him. Ralph Norman from South Carolina, and Keith Self of Texas, all voted for a write-in candidate and denied the Speaker Johnson their vote. I think we're going to go. Elon Musk now has come out. The Republicans are bringing out the big guns. I guess they were kidding before. Vice President Trump endorsed Johnson, but now President Musk is also endorsing him. You notice there's no headline, J.D. Vance endorsed him. Nobody cares about what the Vice President of the United States think. But the fact that Elon Musk, that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. So round 1 results, the Republicans did not vote for Johnson. There will be more rounds. There will be more pressure. There will be more phone calls. There will be more promises made. There will be more backroom deals made. I think Johnson, at the end of this, will be House Speaker. But but who knows what is going to have to give in order for that actually to happen. A handful of Republicans who initially were iffy about voting for Johnson actually landed up voting for him, including Chip Roy, the Republican from Texas, who gave a great speech about how bad the continuing resolution was, that budget deal. He voted for Mike Johnson. Partially how Johnson managed to get some of them to vote, supposedly, is by promising to look at several areas in which he would, endorse cutting government spending. Of course, all those areas are so tiny it won't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. He didn't promise to look at Medicare, Social Security, and defense and veterans and all the things that really matter. He promised to look at other things. So it's all just a charade. It's a game. There's some politics here. My guess is Massey is probably going to vote against Johnson no matter what. My guess is Ralph Norman and Keith Self are making a point. If I had to guess, the next round or the third round, they'll vote for Johnson, and Johnson will be Speaker of the House. But now that Elon Musk has endorsed Johnson, all bets are off. I mean, it could go like this. Everybody, Democrats might vote for him now. I mean, Elon has spoken. Pretty amazing. American politics has taken this amazing turn. It's going to be, the fun is just not going to stop. It's going to be super interesting. All right, talk about not fun, but lots of stupidity. Joe Biden leaving the White House is not satisfied with all the bad stuff he did while president. He's not satisfied by the spending, by the inflation, by the government intervention in the economy, and everything else he's done. As one of his parting gifts, he gives us, he's finding with regard to Nippon Steel trying to buy U.S. Steel. And look, I know I keep talking about this one, but this is a big deal. This is not a little deal. But here's what he says. I mean, I'm reading from his statement that was put out in writing. There is credible evidence that leads me to believe that Nippon Steel Corporation, and then he goes on to all its subsidiaries and stuff, might take action that threatens to impair the national security of the United States. I mean, this is so disgusting, so offensive, right? A direct assault on freedom, capitalism, on markets. A direct assault on the rule of law, because there's no threat here to national security. None. Zero. Zilch. It's a slap in the face and an affront to an ally of the United States, Japan, who we just today announced that was selling, $3.5 billion worth of air-to-air missiles to. But we can't trust them with buying U.S. steel. They're an ally. We'll sell them weapons. Can't trust them. Can't trust one of their companies, a company that is incredibly competent in steelmaking and committed to the U.S. market. I mean, this isn't U.S. first. This is literally U.S. last. This is literally an anti-American decision, which Donald Trump wholeheartedly supports. It's just disgusting, left and right uniting like this. It is a slap in the face to American workers. The union members who work at U.S. Steel supported the deal. Now, we'll get to why he did this. It's a slap in the face to American consumers who would have benefited enormously from lower steel prices that would have resulted from Nippon Steel bringing its innovations, bringing its increased productivity, given its expertise in steel, to lowering the prices of steel. And of course, it is an insult to the intelligence of every American, Japanese, and ally out there. Credible evidence, he says. What credible evidence? Where is the credible evidence? I mean, the shareholders of U.S. Steel wanted to do this deal, voted overwhelmingly for it. Nippon Steel has made all kinds of assurances to try to assure Americans that there's no national security issue here. Again, it's a Japanese company, not a Chinese company, not a Russian company, not even an Iranian company or North Korean company, but a Japanese company. What is the national security risk? Credible evidence, which we will not specify. I mean, this is a truly disgusting. It's disgusting in particular given that both political parties support this, that Trump supports this, that J.D. Vance supports this. Now, why did he do it? The union, the steelworkers union, the higher up, the big shots in the union, who have been Biden supporters for decades, opposed the deal. Note that the workers who would have been affected by the deal on the ground supported it. But the mucky mucks on top opposed it. Despicable, disgraceful, anti-capitalist, anti-markets, anti-rule of law. And if I were the Japanese, I would be legitimately insulted and offended by this. This is all about Biden being loyal to supporters at the National United Steelworkers Union, the brass, the big shots, who claimed that Nippon Steel was going to shut down this and shut down that, and that Japanese were dumping steel in the United States. All BS claims. This basically will raise steel prices. This hurts U.S. Steel shareholders. The stock price will come down. Nippon was paying a massive premium. Shareholders were going to make a lot of money off of this. It hurts workers. U.S. Steel's a lot less, likely to survive. It already has shrunk. It's way smaller than it was at its peak. Maybe another U.S. Steel company will buy them, but if they do, for a lot lower price, and the combination will be a lot less beneficial to the United States. But let me be very, very clear here. There is no national security issue here. None whatsoever. And there never was. And what is happening with this economic nationalist agenda that both the Republicans and the Democrats are embracing is the use of national security to basically engage in central planning. Basically engage in central planning. Who will own what, under what circumstances, under what terms. Even the Committee for Foreign Investments in the United States, which is supposed to be the ones that assesses whether it's a national security threat or not, came out and said, well, they were too cowardly to say, so they didn't say anything. They stayed out of it. The Treasury Department, the State Department, and the Pentagon all claimed there was no national security issue here. And that there was no issue, no threat. So all this is to silence opposition. And all it is again, a statist, central planning takeover of, continual takeover of American industry. And then people complain that manufacturing is leaving America, that we're not as productive as we used to be. Well, of course not. The more government intervenes, the less we will be. And of course, this is hurting us, our economy, and it hurts our allies. So lose, 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 lose. Lose, 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 lose. The good news is this could go to court. Both companies, US Steel and Nippon, have suggested that they will take it to court. They have, in a statement, they said that Biden's decision is a clear violation of due process and the law. I wonder if it goes to court and the court clears the merger, what Trump will then do. Will he let it go, or will he try to prohibit it by other means? But the bottom line is we're heading towards a period in which there's no opposition to politicians basically deciding winners and losers, what is good for the economy, what is not, what is acceptable, or is not, who can buy whom, and under what circumstances. We're heading towards a really bad deal, and a really bad, institutionally. Trump might deregulate in certain fields, but then if he blocks deals like this is more damaging than the benefits the deregulation have. So, and I'm sorry bringing up Trump, but if Biden had passed on this deal, Trump would have blocked it. He said so. I'm not making that up. So let's hope the courts are more sensible than our politicians. And here I have some good news. So do you remember, it's been going on for like 10 years. Do you remember the discussions about net neutrality? And under Obama, the FCC passed these net neutrality regulations. The regulations prevent broadband providers from slowing or blocking access to internet content, or really what it does is it prevents broadband providers from selling different speeds to different services. So they're like saying, okay, Netflix, we will give you a bigger piece of the pipe. We will let your stuff be sent at a higher speed than things that, because it's video, than things that don't need that, right? So net neutrality is the idea. They can't do that. They have to treat everybody exactly the same. And net neutrality is really, really bad. FCC passed net neutrality under Obama. And then under Trump's FCC, they reversed it. So we've had no net neutrality for the last 7 years. And the world did not end. Democrats all said it would end when net neutrality went away. And then this year, the FCC under Biden reinstituted net neutrality rules. The industry sued, and it went to the ultimately, it was appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati. And the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati has basically said that, and this is, we'll see why this is important. Because net neutrality is terrible, but it probably would have been reversed by the Trump FCC anyway, so it would have never gone into effect. But it's important for other reasons. The Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati said the FCC lacked the authority to reinstate these rules, because the law basically that created the FCC did not give it explicit authority over this kind of regulation. Now, in this opinion, the three judges of the Sixth Circuit cited a Supreme Court decision that was passed in June called the Loper-Bright. We talked about this with Steve Simpson when he was on the show. Loper-Bright overturned a 1984 legal precedent that gave deference to government agencies and regulations. Loper-Bright basically says, no, Agencies can only regulate to the extent that the law creating them, that legislation that Congress passes permits them to. They cannot now apply new regulations in areas that are not covered by the explicit laws that relate to it. There is no law relating to net neutrality. There's no law that says the FCC has authority over, the speeds or the bandwidth that is provided to internet providers. And therefore, according to Loper Bright, the FCC cannot regulate this. Now, this is huge. This is the first case that has used Loper Bright that I don't know that it is the first case, but that I've seen. Net neutrality is really bad, so this is really good, a really good decision. But you can imagine now how this is going to affect lots of services, lots of regulations that these alphabet agencies have passed. It's going to affect them in all kinds of, things that they have done that are outside the scope of the law. And without the Trump administration really doing anything, just this Supreme Court decision in June, this is the Chevron, I think this is the appeal of the Chevron doctrine, is going to basically reduce regulations and weaken the regulatory agencies significantly. So we're going to see a real weakening of regulations, independent of the Trump administration. And of course, because Congress is so divided and dominated by Republicans, we're not going to see any bills passed to give the FCC more power, or any of these regulatory agencies more power, at least I hope not. So we're going to see a lot more lawsuits, lawsuits. They're going to try to hollow out federal regulations at the FCC and lots of other agencies, and where the courts are basically going to throw out huge areas of regulations. This particular one, basically, that's it. The FCC has no more power over net neutrality issues. The issue is dead. It's finished, no matter who gets elected president, who is at the FCC. This particular is dead until Congress passes a law that relates to it. That is good news, and it's good news not just in the narrowness of this particular opinion, but in the wide scope of the fact that Chevron has been dismantled, and the consequences of that decision are going to be incredibly wide-ranging. All right, let's see. Let's see where we are. Yeah, quickly, I wanted to share a graph with you, a graph that I think is really cool. This was posted by Bjorn Lomborg, the climate change critic, or the climate change policy critic, who's been really, really good on this. And this is a graph basically of the horizontal line is the percent solar and wind in electricity production in a particular country. And the vertical is basically cost per kilowatt of energy. And you can see the countries that have more solar and wind pay more for electricity. Now, what makes this graph important and interesting is the fact that you hear constantly from people, oh no, solar panels are now cheaper than natural gas. It's cheaper to produce electricity from solar panels than natural gas or any other alternative. It is the cheapest form of electricity production. Well, that can't be the case. Look at this. I mean, it's almost linear. It's not quite. You've got some outliers like Italy. But generally, the more electricity is produced from solar, the more expensive it is. Look at the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, Spain, and Germany. All around 35% of their electricity is from solar and wind. And they are priced at, from the US, 2 to 2.5 times? And not even talking about Denmark, which gets 60% of its electricity from solar and wind and has the most expensive electricity prices in the world, other than, I guess, Italy, where its prices are expensive for a bunch of reasons that I think have to do with the fact that it's Italy. One of the most, labor regulations and all the other regulations that they have. But look at U.S. U.S. only produces about 15%, and electricity prices are half what they are in Germany. Look at China. China, electricity prices are a third of what they are in Germany. And of course, it only produces 12, 13% of its electricity from wind or solar. Same with India. And then when it's surprised that Europe has such a hard time with manufacturing, with producing anything, given how expensive electricity is. Electricity is necessary for production. So it's an interesting graph. Japan, by the way, is moving towards more and more nuclear. So their mix is going to be more and more nuclear. But you can see how Germany, Spain, United Kingdom, Netherlands just are not going to be able to compete, given how expensive. Now, Greece, which is up there, at least has sunshine. Spain at least has sunshine. But what are the Germans, the Dutch, and the Brits, not to mention the Danish, even thinking about solar? Now, I think a lot of that is wind, but it's also solar. They're insane. The sun barely shines in those countries. All right, really interesting. Bjorn Lomborg, really, really worth following on Twitter if you don't yet. Let's see. All right. More crazy economic policy. This relates to the show I did, if you remember, about a week and a half ago, on a rational policy vis-a-vis China. Well, what we're engaging in is an irrational policy vis-a-vis China. So U.S. right now is weighing a ban on Chinese drones, citing national security concerns, of course. Now, we're not talking here about the Defense Department buying Chinese drones. They've stopped doing that. They used to, and they have stopped. That's good. But they want to ban me from buying Chinese drones. Why? What national security concern is there for me owning a Chinese drone? Why is it any of the government's business whose drones I own? Unless they can embargo everything from China. This is just an expansion of this. We want a domestic drone industry. We want to somehow protect our domestic drone industry. So we're going to ban Chinese drones. So we want to hurt China. We're going to find any way we can to hurt China. We're going to piss them off. We're in a pissing match generally with China. We don't want World War III, but we want Cold War II, and we might want World War III. We don't know. Let's just push China and push China and push China. Now, China, of course, is responding with all kinds of bans on the U.S. and what it will export to the U.S. and what we'll buy from the U.S. And so what we're seeing is just a trade war between us and China that is leading nowhere good, and lots of bad places. And it is not oriented or focused towards a truly rational China policy. And if you're curious about what a truly rational China policy looks like, check out my show that I did about a week and a half ago on a China policy, a rational China policy. So it's ridiculous. China's already announced this week that they are going to stop exporting to the United States all kinds of components for batteries and for solar panels. They dominate, of course, the world in batteries and solar panels, and a bunch of other stuff. This is unnecessary. Unnecessary. Instead, what we really should do is define what truly is crucial to national security and do that. Banning Nippon Steel from U.S. Steel? BS. Banning Chinese drones? BS. Maybe, we need to figure out how to our military needs to figure out how to make sure that there's enough drone production in the United States to match the Chinese. And we better do that fast because the Chinese are building millions and millions of drones for their military. But we better figure out how to match that. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble if we ever do get into a conflict with China. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Quickly on Syria. I don't know if you've seen this video, but this video is a real reflection of the new Syrian regime. So Syria has a new regime ruled by this group that was affiliated with Al Qaeda and then ISIS, but then changed its name and promised that no, they are now very moderate. They are Western. The leader of this group has replaced his typical Arab garb with a suit and tie and a white shirt and a dark suit and nice shoes, and he looks very Western. And they're presenting themselves to the world with the hope of getting rid of the terrorist designation and getting rid of all the sanctions and all the other things that are being placed on the Syrian regime. They are playing nice with the world. But just a quick, easy kind of just indication of who these bastards really are and what their agenda really is. You can see from a 10-second video that's online right now, where the foreign minister of Germany and the foreign minister of France are visiting Syria. And the red carpet is out, and the leader of Syria, this leader Jabali, who's Jolani, who is the leader of this terrorist group and who is an Islamist and who claims to be moderate, he greets them, and he shakes the hand of the French foreign minister and does not offer a hand to shake the German foreign minister because the German foreign minister is a woman. And as an Islamist, he's not going to shake the hand of a woman. Not going to shake the hand of a woman. I mean, what I find disgraceful, really disgraceful, is what you see in the video is she starts reaching out a hand to shake his hand, then realizes, oh, he's not supposed to shake my hand. And she brings it back. She should have put her hand in it to shake. If he wasn't shaking it, she should have turned around and walked home, gone away. Now, to her credit, I'll give her this. She did not wear hair covering. She wore a pair of pretty tight pants. So she's in her pants and a nice shirt, but pants are pretty tight. So at least she did that, right? So here you have a Islamist making clear that he is still an Islamist. That this is not going to be a moderate, Western, liberal regime. This is going to be an Islamist regime that needs financial and diplomatic help from the West, and therefore is going to play along up to a point. They still won't shake the hands of a woman foreign minister, but they'll play along. They'll play along. And the fact that the West is buying this, we'll see what the Trump administration does with Syria, but the fact that the West so far is buying this, that the Biden administration seems to have been buying this, is just more signs of weakness, moral relativism, inability to stand up and again fight for your values, declare who the enemy is. If you're going to allow Islamists in Syria, why not allow Islamists anywhere else, including in Germany and in the UK and everywhere else? So Israel knows who they are. This is why Israel has taken Syrian territory, has increased their defense buffer from these people. They know the danger they pose. They know that they're ultimately real Islamists, that their agenda is an Islamist agenda. Education is likely to be an Islamist education. Syria is likely to be an Islamist jihadist country. Now, we will see whether this regime is going to survive, but at least if this regime survives, that is the outcome. And there are, the mainstream media is not talking about this a lot, but there are battles, there are groups fighting against this regime on all sides. ISIS is fighting them. The truly moderate, more Western-leaning affiliate with the Kurds are fighting them. There are battles on the Lebanese border with the remnants of the former Assad regime and Hezbollah, which was an ally of the Assad regime. So it's not over yet in Syria. There's still a lot of pieces of the civil war that are still going on that have not been resolved. But one thing I'm pretty sure of, we're not talking about moderates here. There's no moderation involved here. All right, finally, I mean, what's happening in South Korea is comedic and depressing and sad. What a great country it is. We know it's a great country just because this is the country whose studios produced Mr. Sunshine and Itaewon Class, two of the best TV shows ever made. This is a country of hardworking people that have turned a desperately, unbelievably poor country just 60 years ago into one of the richest countries in the world today. South Korea it's truly a marvel. And yet its politics is a disaster. Almost every president since they turned democratic, and even some from before, has been indicted for corruption and been spending time in jail. The current president woke up in the morning one day and decided to impose martial law because he wasn't getting along with the parliament, which is dominated by the opposition. Then Parliament got into session somehow and voted against the martial law. Oh, what a surprise. So the president rescinded the martial law. So then Congress impeached the president. But impeachment doesn't mean he's not president anymore. It's just the first step in a process, just like in the United States. The House impeaches, and then there's a trial in the Senate. But he vacates the presidency while he's under impeachment. So there is a president, a temporary president who fills the spot. That temporary president was then impeached as well. So I'm not sure what the status of the president is in South Korea right now. But then the first president who was impeached still has a security. He's still guarded by security forces, both military and police and kind of Secret Service types, because he's still, in some sense, still president. He hasn't been completely kicked out of that position. So he's in his mansion, wherever that is, surrounded by security forces, and the police, a special unit in the South Korean police, decide that now's the time to arrest him. A arrest warrant is issued by somebody to arrest the impeached president. So the police go, first of all, thousands of this guy, political people who support him politically, out in the streets in front of his mansion, preventing the police from getting in. Finally, some police managed to get inside. And there they're confronted by the security forces who say, we are constitutionally required to protect the president. You are violating the Constitution by trying to arrest him. And there's a standoff inside this mansion, between security forces and between the police. Ultimately, the police decide that they're outnumbered and can't handle it, and they retreat. And now the question is, are they going to let the arrest warrant expire? Are they going to renew the arrest warrant? Are they going to come in there with real force? Are they going to wait until he vacates the office of the presidency and then issue the arrest warrant, which seems like the right sequence to do it in? It's just a zoo. It's just a zoo. So I love South Korea. It's a great place, but I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't know what's going on. It's just insane. And you better get your act together. So we will see. We will see what actually happens in South Korea over the next few days, weeks, months. But hopefully, as I said, they get their act together and they figure out what they're doing with this president and move on. Time to move on. All right, there are a bunch of other stories, but I'm going to call that the news. We need to talk about, maybe we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about Ukraine stopping natural gas flows into Europe, a brewing war between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which is bizarre, and a bunch of other things. Worker productivity is up in the United States. Who would have thunk? All right. Let's see. Ian just says that Johnson just won the speakership. I guess they cut a deal, and in the second ballot, I guess he got elected. Who was the ones? Johnson wins speaker vote on first ballot after House drama. How did that happen? They changed their vote. They somehow managed to. Massey voted for Johnson? But Massey voted against him, so he must have switched his vote. That's pretty wild. What did Donald Trump do? What did Elon Musk do? I mean, this is the power of Elon Musk. What did Elon Musk do that Massey, who has been adamant, unequivocal, uncompromising, that he would never vote for Johnson, what did he get? Oh, God. So they changed their vote. No, wait a second. Ralph Norman, South Carolina, and Keith Self of Texas changed their vote to give Massey the victory. So what happened to Massey? Massey voted against him. Massey did not cave. The other two caved. That's what it appears from the Wall Street Journal. But it looks like they literally changed their vote. Fascinating. See, Elon Musk. No, you're right. Massey did cave. Massey did change his mind. So the only guy, so Massey, Norman, and Self all switched their votes. No, wait, no, I'm sorry. Okay. He won by 219 to 215. So, yeah, I don't know. It's not clear to me if Massey switched or not, but it's clear that the other two did. Anyway, there we go. So there's something about Chip Roy getting some key role in the House. The key demand seen by conservatives is unlocking a deal. They wanted to hand over the chairmanship of the House Rules Committee to Chip Roy from Texas. And if he gets that committee, then these other two guys would vote for him. So yeah, so it's just a way to manipulate, to work, to try to get a deal. That was the story. All right. We will see. All right. So I'm not sure what Massey did. We will find out, I guess, later. All right. We are way behind on the Super Chat. I mean, way behind. You guys are like, we've given enough this year. We got to fund this show. And we've got a lot of people watching, 140 people watching. So, it wouldn't take much from each one of you. A sticker or something would be very much appreciated to keep this show going. Of course, there's very few Super Chat questions, so the show will be short as well. I do want to thank a few of the stickers, because we did get some stickers. Carolina from Mexico. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you. Where is this? Where'd it go? All right, this keeps slipping out. Thank you, Apollo. Thank you, Ollie. And thank you, Apollo Zeus. All right, so thank you guys for the stickers. Those of you watching now, value for value. If you get some value out of the show, please consider supporting the show and helping us reach our targets. We've been going for an hour and a bit, so we're into our second hour. So the target is a total of $500. Let's see, a few other things. I want to remind you that Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the show. Alex from alexepstein.substack.com, where he provides talking points on all the most exciting, relevant, interesting issues of the day relating to climate change and energy. Alex talking points are geared towards letting you use them. You use them effectively. And they are great communication tools. They will enhance your ability to communicate your views on these issues. Alex also has an Alex AI, which is incredibly powerful. And you get to ask it questions, and it will tell you what Alex would tell you, right? And then we also, Ayn Rand Institute is sponsoring the show, and the Ayn Rand Institute right now is promoting scholarships for the Ayn Rand Conference in Austin, Texas in February. Austin, Texas in February, where you will dive deep into objectivist content with people like professors like Greg Salmieri and Ben Baer, and I think Mike Mazza is going to be there, and maybe Tara Smith and others. It's going to be an amazing conference with some of the best minds in objectivism, and you can hang out with them and ask them questions, and of course participate in the sessions. If you're a student, or if you have plans to be would like to be an objectivist intellectual one day, apply for scholarship. Expenses paid, travel, hotel, and the tuition all paid. Go to AynRand.org, AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here, and you can do it. Weather in Austin could be anywhere between beautiful, high 60s, low 70s, and sunny to really cold in the 30s, won't snow, but it could rain, and you could have ice on the road at night. So it could be anywhere in between, though, but it can be beautiful. All right, and finally, really trying to do a beginning of the year push, a January push to get you guys to subscribe to the Yaron Brook Show on Patreon and to become monthly contributors to the show. For $10 on Patreon, you get access to my podcast with no ads, like all these shows you can listen to anyway with no advertising, just for $10 a month on Patreon. But you can also do $25, $100, $500, $1,000. There's no limitations on Patreon. So I'm looking for 80 new people. I think it's less because a bunch of you have already signed up. But let's say 70, 75 new people to sign up over the next few months to Patreon. I'd like to grow that form of support significantly. It'll also make it easier for me not to bug you as much about the Super Chats. Super Chats become less important if we are raising significant funds through the regular monthly contributions. So please consider supporting the show on Patreon or on PayPal. But Patreon right now, I'm tracking the numbers, and Patreon's easier for you, easier for me. You can change, you can reduce the amount, you can increase the amount. It's a lot easier to navigate. So Patreon.com, just search Yaron Brook Show, and you can make a contribution. You can also go to my website, yaronbrookshow.com, and there's a link there to the Patreon site where you can make the contribution. It would be amazing to get a few people who are willing to do $100 a month or $250 a month. Again, think of what that translates into in terms of support per show. I do so many shows. You get so much content from me that it is really a minuscule amount per show or per hour of content. All right, Apollo Zeus, thank you for the sticker. Hector Reason, thank you for the sticker. You too can do a sticker and support the show right now. Don't have to wait for Patreon or anything else. Right now, with 99 cents is what Hector did, and that's great. Thank you, Hector. $1.49 or £1.49, Apollo Zeus. So any amount is incredibly helpful. Really, 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 really appreciate it. So please consider supporting the show right now. And I'm going to run down these questions, and there's not a lot more and not a lot of questions to cover today. All right, Shahzad. In an interview, you mentioned that people who follow Kant's philosophy are children of Kant. Was this deliberate, perhaps in contrast to students of Objectivism? No, I don't think so, and I can't remember doing it, and I can't remember being deliberate. What I meant was that intellectually, philosophically, whether they know it or not, they have Kant's genes in them, not genes biologically, but the Kant virus, the Kant, the Kant's ideas are part of who they are. They've been educated by Kant, whether they know it or not, because all their professors are ultimately Kantian, whether those professors know it or not. So it wasn't really in contrast, or was again, I don't remember doing it, but I doubt that it was purposeful. More of a phrase that came to my mind at that moment, and I participated. Adri just did $50. Thank you, Adri. That is very, very much appreciated. Thanks for all your support, Adri. Adri is also a monthly supporter on one of the platforms, so thank you for doing both. Arum, missed you live on New Year's. Happy 2025. Thank you, Arum. Thank you for all that you do. Also, I'm subscribed as a YBS Patreon supporter. Thank you for doing that. Anyone who fights for the future lives in it today. Absolutely. You too can fight for the future by supporting this show. Michael, is it a sign of low self-esteem when an unattractive older guy has a gorgeous wife or girlfriend half his age? No, I don't think so. I mean, it depends on, on her and on him, right? She could be gorgeous and incredibly smart and attracted to his mind. Think Leonard Peikoff marrying somebody half his age. I don't think that reflected a bad sense of self-esteem on either party's side. So no, I don't think the woman necessarily is a low self-esteem, and I don't think it's for the man a low self-esteem. But I think our culture generally puts way too much emphasis on attractiveness, on good looks, and not enough focus on values, on shared passions, and shared interests, on love. And love can often overcome, if you will, differences in age. Now, saying that, it's also hard to maintain because the difference in age doesn't go away. And yet the older person is only become older. And as he becomes older, it becomes more of a burden, more of a problem, more of a challenge, particularly for a younger spouse. So it's not an easy relationship, and many of them don't last because of exactly that. But I don't see it as a self-esteem issue. Necessarily, it could be. It could be a woman just trying to go for somebody, I don't know for what, for his money maybe, because he's older, or a man just wanting a girl for her looks. Both of those would reflect negative self-esteem if that was the only purpose. Michael, is logic and pride a foreign language to many people, particularly people not from the U.S.? That's why reading Rand for them never produces a click in their minds. Zombies don't respond to stimuli. No, I don't know why that is. I mean, there are just as many people these days who Ayn Rand clicks for who are foreigners than there are Americans. As I've said before, many of our up-and-coming intellectuals, students at the Ayn Rand University, are Europeans and South Americans. So they had no problem with pride and logic. So I don't think it's a foreign language. I think just like for many Americans and many foreigners, pride and logic are things that are inconceivable to them. They don't know what to do with them. Logic is hard for them. They've never learned how to be logical. They've never been encouraged to be logical. They've never been motivated to be logical. And then pride is a sin for most people. So these concepts are very difficult for them, not because they're foreigners, but because our whole culture is geared against them. And I think that's true just as much in America as it is outside of America. Esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, do you have a favorite pasta dish? I mean, I don't generally eat pasta. I generally avoid carbs, or, not all carbs, not all the time. I ate pasta yesterday. But I try to avoid pasta, and I don't eat a lot of it, and I'm certainly not an expert on it. If I had to guess right now, I mean, I've had some raviolo, the big ravioli, which has been spectacular, really, really good. I've had good ravioli. But I think the most consistently good pasta I've had that I've liked is gnocchi. Is gnocchi a pasta? I think gnocchi is a pasta. Maybe it's not a pasta. Maybe it's a pasta. I think it's a pasta. So I think that's probably my best. Now, as a dish with a particular sauce, and particularly this, I'm not into pasta enough to really have Jennifer says gnocchi is a potato. Ian says gnocchi is a pasta. So there's clear disagreement about what gnocchi is. Maybe it can be both. I don't know. But there's clearly disagreement going on here about the essence of gnocchi. I don't eat a lot of pasta, so I don't have a favorite pasta dish. When pasta's good, I can say this, when pasta's good, it's really good. And when I'm in Italy, which I will be for like 4 or 5 weeks in September, I will probably eat more pasta than I usually do. Maybe then I'll develop a liking for pasta. I know no pasta probably explains my crazy ideas. Andrew, one can either be resentful and miserable over having been taught and accepted bad philosophy in the past, or accept proper philosophy and enjoy what one can. It's tempting to grouse over about the past, but what's the point? I agree. What's the point is exactly right. There's a concept in finance that calls sunk cost. It basically says that when you're evaluating whether to continue on an investment or continue on a project, the only thing relevant in evaluating the future of a project, whether to stay in a project or not, is the future. Is the future success, the future cash flows, the future profitability of the project. How much money and how much time and how much effort you've already put in the project is irrelevant to your decision about whether to continue to invest, to continue the project itself. Irrelevant. It's like a decision about whether to stay married. How long you've been married, how much energy you've put into it, how relevant all that is irrelevant to the decision today about whether to stay married into the future, which is related to, do you love your spouse, and do you have a good life with them, and do you project a positive life into the future? The past is irrelevant to the future. Your marriage in the past is irrelevant to the decision about marriage in the future. The same marriage, right? And that's true of, you might have had a bad childhood. Irrelevant. today is the beginning of the rest of your life. Today is the beginning of the rest of your life. That's what matters. So, yes, absolutely true, Andrew. Drin, I wish I had your voice. I'd yell sense into people. Are only Jews cheap, or are all first-immigrant groups? Elon is doing a talk with the leader of AFD. All right, are only Jews cheap? Are Jews cheap? But where do you come up with these things? But which Jews do you know who are cheap? As somebody who's grown up surrounded by Jews, some are cheap and some are not. I mean, it is a nasty stereotype and untrue. Some Jews are cheap, some Jews are not. So, and I don't know about first-immigrant groups, and I don't know about any of that. Yeah, certainly, poor people are cheap. They don't have much to spend. So, yeah. Elon is doing a talk with the leader of AFD. It doesn't surprise me. He's expressed huge support for the AFD. I need to research the AFD more closely to see how bad they are. Michael, it's always easier to believe something than it is to understand it. Well, yes and no. It depends what we mean by easier. Easier in the sense of exerting energy, yes, it's easier. Easier in the sense of doable, not for me. It's much easier for me to understand something than just accept something on faith. Because don't buy faith, belief, with no reason. All right, Kim, my religious irrational colleague recently asked me for personal advice. Any advice for when this happens? Or are these people lost causes? No, I don't think they're lost causes. I don't think people are necessarily lost causes. You have to cut your losses. So if you discover they are a lost cause, then cut your loss and don't get too involved or to go down the rabbit hole. But if he asks you, give him rational advice based on logic and reality, see how he responds, and based on that, decide whether you're going to invest any more effort or any more time in doing it. So I would definitely try before you give up on them. But definitely be completely straight up. Logic, facts, rationality. Focus in on that. All right, guys, we're going to call it a day. Thank you to all the super chatters for your questions. Thank you to all the sticker people for your support. Don't forget to become monthly sponsors on Patreon. And I will see you all tomorrow for an extended show on healthcare. We're going to go deep into American healthcare system. Not easy. It's going to be a challenge to put this one together. There's a lot to talk about. Probably be ultimately be more than one show. I'm going to bring on somebody from AFCAM, the Association for Free Market Medicine, something like that, to talk about their perspective on how to fix healthcare, which might not be exactly the same as my perspective, or they might have different ideas or different concretes. But you will definitely hear from me, and so we'll do more than one show on healthcare. More than one show on healthcare. Frank just came in and with a good job, a handshake on it. Thank you, Frank, with $50 to get us to at least the first hour goal, which I very much appreciate. Thank you, guys. I will see you all tomorrow on the healthcare show. Then Sunday is Hebrew only. Hebrew only. See you then. Bye, everybody.